On the night we got married, I hid beneath the bed, intending to surprise my husband. Instead, another woman walked in first and placed her phone on speaker. What she played made my heart freeze in terror. Have you ever felt the precise moment your soul shatters? Not into a million pieces like glass, but into a fine, choking dust that coats the inside of your lungs, making every subsequent breath a labor of sheer will? I felt that sensation lying on the abrasive, industrial-grade carpet of a luxury hotel suite, inhaling the scent of dust mites and expensive floor cleaner, while the man I had just promised to love, honor, and cherish plotted the exact date of my funeral with a woman I thought was his accountant. The idea to hide under the bed had been born from a naive, champagne-fueled burst of giddiness, a desire to start our marriage with laughter, to jump out and scare my stoic, serious husband, Elias, and watch his composure crack into a smile. I had kicked off my heels, the white satin stained with grass from the outdoor ceremony, and shimmied beneath the massive king-sized frame, the box spring pressing uncomfortably against my spine, giggling into my hand as I waited for the sound of his keycard. I expected him to walk in alone, perhaps loosening his tie, perhaps calling my name with that deep, resonant voice that had charmed me into submission over the last whirlwind year. Instead, the door clicked open 20 minutes later, and two pairs of footsteps entered, one heavy and familiar, the other the sharp, staccato click of stilettos that I didn't recognize. I froze, my breath catching in my throat, assuming it was housekeeping or perhaps a luggage porter, until the woman spoke, her voice devoid of the polite deference of staff, dripping instead with a familiarity that made my skin crawl. She didn't ask where to put the bags. She simply walked to the center of the room, stopping inches from where my face was pressed against the floor, and said that they needed to review the timeline before the honeymoon phase began in earnest. I lay there, paralyzed by confusion, staring at the toes of her red-soled shoes, waiting for Elias to dismiss her, to tell her that this was his wedding night and business could wait. But he didn't. He locked the door, the heavy deadbolt sliding home with a finality that echoed in the silence, and told her to play the recording to ensure there were no discrepancies in their story. That was the moment the game ended and the nightmare began. The moment the silence under the bed transformed from a hiding spot into a coffin. To understand how I ended up beneath that bed, you have to understand the man who put me there, or rather, the carefully constructed mirage of a man I had fallen in love with. Elias was the kind of person who felt like gravity. When he entered a room, the atmosphere shifted, pulling everyone into his orbit with a mixture of charisma and quiet intensity that I mistook for depth. We met in a coffee shop, a cliché that he exploited perfectly, commenting on the book I was reading, a dense, obscure history of Victorian architecture with a knowledge that seemed too specific to be feigned. I was 26, a junior archivist at the City Museum, used to being overlooked, used to fading into the background of my own life, and here was this older, sophisticated developer who looked at me as if I were a rare artifact he had just discovered. He courted me with an intensity that I now recognize as love bombing, a relentless barrage of attention, gifts, and grand gestures that dismantled my defenses before I even knew they were being attacked. He didn't just want to date me, he wanted to consume me. Within 3 months, he was talking about marriage. Within 6, he had convinced me to move out of the apartment I shared with my sister, Sarah, and into his sprawling, minimalist estate on the outskirts of the city. A house that was beautiful but felt cold, like living inside a sculpture rather than a home. Sarah, my innocent bystander in this tragedy, had warned me. She told me that he moved too fast, that his eyes didn't match his smile, that there was something hollow about the way he spoke about his past, which was a carefully curated sob story about a tragic widowerhood that garnered instant sympathy. I dismissed her concerns as jealousy, as the protectiveness of a big sister who didn't want to lose her roommate, and I allowed Elias to slowly, methodically isolate me from the only family I had. He did it with a smile, telling me that Sarah was toxic to our relationship, that we needed to focus on building our own foundation.
Full story on channel link below.